The St. Louis Cardinals are the gold standard for organizations. You know what? Sell Pujols. Win the World Series the next year. One pitcher hurt after another. The organization keeps replenishing itself. There is really not a close second.
Model organization, both in terms of their success and in the way they relate to their fan base, the way they tap into their history. There's a feel-good vibe around the Cardinals, and it's a
that's what makes it so shocking.
St. Louis.
That's what makes it so shocking, isn't it?
Yeah, especially if, as Michael Schmidt laid it out, and he has it perfectly. He's the guy who broke the story, after all. If it goes higher up the pyramid, it's going to be a big, big deal and very disillusioning.
How likely do you
I couldn't begin to guess. I couldn't begin to guess, except I would say that in my personal experience, John Mozeliak, the general manager, and Bill DeWitt, the primary owner, are ethical people. Are they ruthless competitors in a certain sense? Everyone in sports has to be. But are they unethical? I haven't found them.
So what's the difference between this and stealing signs?
Stealing signs is not only low tech, but it's gamesmanship. You tipped your signs. Somehow we picked that up.
So you get what you deserve.
Yeah, that's, on the other hand, if you steal signs with binoculars or with videotape, that's viewed as beyond the pale.
So let me just say, your son or my son would be saying, okay, but they're using old passwords that the Houston Astros still had there. Like, our kids would say, that's just as stupid as giving away your sign. I'm not justifying anything. I'm just saying it's a new world.
And if you're tipping your pitches because you hold the ball in the glove a different way when you throw the curve ball, or there's something slightly different and someone picks up on that, that's kind of on you and good for them. Now, this is, if true, a crime. It's a federal crime that's been committed. But your point is correct. Jeff Luhnow, who left the Cardinals, viewed a polarizing figure, but viewed as one of the cutting-edge people in baseball, taking Moneyball to the next level. A very smart guy. You would think he'd cover his tracks better than that and not leave himself vulnerable to this.
Mike Barnicle, I don't want anybody at home to get confused while they're eating their Cheetos in their basement, in their mother's basement, blogging in their underwear. But the fact of the matter is, these are multi-million-dollar organizations. And if you have one file that has the most important information about your organization, and you've got somebody that leaves your organization and you don't change your password, all right, after the investigation's over in St. Louis, somebody needs to be fired in Houston.
Well, there's no sport, at least in my estimation, that relies more on what they call sabermetrics than does baseball. And, Bob, you should explain, because you're more of an expert in it than I am. Not really, but...
but for the sake of this segment...
Yeah, for the sake of false modesty.
Explain, the lockbox, the vault that they got from the Astros, what's contained in it.
Well, there's the database, the raw information, and people might say, well, everyone pretty much has access to the same statistics, and they have their own scouts. But then there are paradigms that teams, especially the cutting-edge teams, create. So they take this information and they feed it into formulas or algorithms designed to produce a small edge. But in sports, it's often a small edge that makes a difference in a game or winning a championship. It isn't a 50% edge. Luhnow himself said if we can gain a 5% edge over time, that's going to make a lot of difference. So if the
Cardinals did get this information and used it, how would it help in games?
Well, you might get their scouting report, Houston's scouting report on your hitters, how they plan to work you. If that information made its way to people in uniform and they use it on the field, that'd be one thing. But also, since Luhnow has been so successful both with the Cardinals and with the Astros in identifying non-major league personnel, high school and college kids that they would draft, knowing what their evaluations are of young players would be important because it might influence your own decisions. That's in theory. We don't know that that happened. It could be that just a couple of guys who kind of meet the profile of Jonah Hill and Moneyball, and there are hundreds of them now because every team has their own analytics department in addition to old school scouts. If it's just a couple of those guys looking to make mischief and nobody higher up ordered it, knew about it, or benefited from it, then it's a scrape. But if it's worse than that, if it goes to the top, it's a double black eye for the Cardinals and for the city of St. Louis, because they identify so much of the identity of the town is tied up in that team.
All right, Bob.